Hello, welcome to this IBC 365 webinar produced and brought to you by Huawei. Now, for pay TV operators, it can be a tough market out there with the challenges of cord cutting and trying to maintain ARPU. But global telco TV players can build in their network advantages to maintain a position of strength. They're going beyond the walled garden of IPTV to deliver a convergence video service hub. Now, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's webinar, where Huawei and some of the partners that we can see on the screen are going to be discussing the critical aspects of running a successful telco TV service, from content security to aggregating OTT services onto the set-top box, and also reaching beyond that set-top box to a wide variety of devices, all while maintaining the reliability of the service. So let's meet our speakers who are going to be sharing their thoughts and expertise. Ronald Peters is Product Manager for Online Piracy Detection, Tracemark and Trusted Home at Irdeto. Welcome to you, Ronald.
Thank you.
Carlos Don is a Key Account Manager at Oregan Networks, where he's responsible for Oregon's pay TV and OTT operator clients in the South America region. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you.
Steve Tinter is VP of Customer Delivery at Skyworth, with experience in set-top box integration and hardware. Welcome to you, Steve.
Hi.
And Ming Chao is VP for Solution Consulting at Huawei Hybrid Video Solutions, where he's helping global telecom operators in their video service transformation journey. Welcome to you, Ming.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm Rob Ambrose, and I'll be moderating the discussion on behalf of IBC. The format, we're going to give a quick overview of what each of our panelists is doing in this space, and then each of them is going to share their own insights into their own particular area of expertise, and then we'll come back together with a bit of a group discussion about some of the wider trends towards the end of the hour. So, to set the scene then, what I'd like to do is ask each of you to give a bit of an overview of your role in telco TV transformation, what your company is doing. So let's start with you, Ronald, at Irdeto. Just give us a quick overview.
Yeah, a very brief one. We're a plus 50 years old company, originating from pay TV, analog conditional access, even digital conditional access. Nowadays, the world leader in digital platform security, and we're empowering businesses to innovate for a secure and connected future. And what I'm doing there, just you mentioned it in the introduction, right? I'm heading a solution management team for our suite of anti-piracy solutions, and forensic watermarking is one of them.
Great, thank you. We'll hear more about that in just a minute. Carlos Don at Oregan Networks, tell us what you're doing there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the Key Account Manager for all Latin America region. Oregon is an agile engineering specialist with development and support centers in UK, Scandinavia, and Latin America. Our expertise in digital video spans decades of innovation, technology, enabling to effectively lead an end-to-end product manager cycle from design to post-market evolution. We have custom solutions such as smart TV apps, Android TV launcher, and middleware, legacy STV upcycling, among others.
Great, thank you. We'll hear more from you as well in a little while. Steve Tinter at Skyworth, tell us a bit more about your role.
I'm Vice President for Delivery, so I'm responsible for all of the international deliveries of Shenzhen Skyworth Digital Technology. We deal primarily in set-top boxes, but also the connected devices, broadband products, ONTs, that type of thing, networking products in general. I get involved in a lot of pre-sales stuff. I get involved in a lot of project deliveries, and I've got a full book.
Fantastic. And last but definitely not least, Ming Chao at Huawei. Tell us a little bit more about your role there.
Okay, yeah. So first of all, I think you know Huawei names, you know quite a lot. So that I don't have to really to spend time on that. But indeed, Huawei works in IP video solutions for more than 20 years. And we are very special that we only focus on one particular segment, is telco video segment. So today I'm very happy, to first share, what I have been engaging with customer, which is our customer, they really want to look for to find out what is, their solution strategies, and how the solution actually help them, for the service to move on. So that my role really is as a solution consulting, so that, to find out how we can help them along with our partners together. So today I'm very, honored to have all of you guys here today, with me to join this webinar.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ming. So let's start our discussion. As I say, we'll spend a few minutes with each of our speakers to get their particular take on that particular area of the telco TV journey. Let's start with security, and Ronald Peters at Irdeto. Tell us, what are some of the sort of key requirements of the sort of security measures that are needed, as particularly the value of the content increases? We've got more live value content. We can have premium video on demand. What are some of the challenges that creates in terms of security?
Yeah, so looking at the perspective from the owners, right, or the licensors of this content, it's like a layered model. So what we typically see is that there is a basic requirement, which is to have conditional access for broadcast and DRM for OTT, right? You have to have that in place. Recently, that has been added, especially for OTT, by what is called CDN, or fragment or segment tokenization, meaning that you won't have just freely access to the CDN. In the original days, maybe people thought, well, if you are encrypting your content, I can give everybody access, because you won't have the key, so you can't decrypt anyway. Well, to fight DRM vulnerabilities, nowadays it's a very common requirement that tokenization for the CDN side is required in your playout, basically. Then what we also see is a variety of extra measures on top of DRM, geolocation, concurrent stream management, track keys. I'm not sure whether you're aware for that, but basically that is meant to be different DRM keys for different qualities. So if somebody has access to the lower quality SD or lower, that they don't automatically can also decrypt HD or 4K. Right? So that's what we call track keys. And very recently, we see some of the licensors trying things to require about key rotation. So that, for example, during a live event, every 20 minutes or even at higher frequencies, the keys are rotated. And then, of course, there's the separate one, which is the requirement to have forensic watermarking in place. But it's like a layered model, basically.
Okay, so just let's take up the discussion around watermarking for a moment. What are the sort of situations that's needed? And when it is, how do telco TV operators make the decision between using a server-side solution and a client-side approach to that watermarking?
Yeah, and thanks for bringing it up, because I did prepare a few slides to talk about that. For those people who aren't aware of watermarking, this is a typical architecture of head-end watermarking. So somewhere in your flow, usually it's the encoder, you insert a watermark. Basically, it means that from that moment on, you've got two streams, an A and a B stream, basically. They propagate through your workflow, through your packager, and become available in the origin to the CDN. And then basically, based on some algorithm, you can integrate it, for example, with our switcher, which is a component of us. That CDN switches basically between those A and B streams in such a way that everybody gets a unique sequence, right? So Robert would get a different sequence than Carlos would get, for example. And in the end, you can retrieve that sequence if one of them leaked that content, and you can retrieve it back onto the originator. Client works a little bit different. This is a very common architecture for client, basically. The blending, so to say, of the watermark happens at the client end. So basically, the content gets unwatermarked to the client. That client basically fetches a unique watermark from some kind of service, for example, the tracemark overlay service, and it blends it with the content. It's not very intelligent, right? Because usually you don't have enough power on that client side, so it's usually an overlay, and usually it's available on your entire program, basically. Well, that both approaches basically bring pros and cons, right? And those are in this slide, Robert. So head-end watermarking, you can reach managed and unmanaged devices. Client side, it's only for closed, right? Head-end watermarking, because you've got a lot of performance, computational power in your headend, you can be very selective on where you are including that watermark, typically only in one frame per segment. That is a very common used mechanism. So it's a lot less visible, right? It's highly likely to be invisible, basically. There's different things. Others. One of the lower one I want to speak about. So head-end watermarking typically is stronger against so-called collusion attacks, and then a collusion attacks means that the pirated stream or the pirated clip that becomes available is mixed out of different sources, and with a head-end solution, usually you are more likely to find those different originators than it is when using a client side. So typically what you see is that operators look at this list, but also look, for example, or where in my workflow do I have the most control, or where do I have the least effort to implement it. And sometimes a driver, the driver itself for watermarking is a factor as well, right? Because you may see it as a licensor requirement. You may also see people just protecting it because it is their own content. And sometimes even some people are introducing watermarking because they want to prove to a content owner that the piracy isn't originating from them. And all in all, that makes basically the choice between head-end and client. If people are neutral, our recommendation is to go head-end. But you can see that also from the most of the green lines in this slide.
Now, changing subjects slightly, we're hearing more and more about forensic solutions in the approach to content protection. What is that, and how is it different from more established conditional access and DRM?
Yeah, the three things, conditional access, DRM, and forensic watermarking, can be considered solutions for different purposes, right? I mean, let's start with CA, conditional access. It's a business enabler, right? When you use a broadcast technology, a broadcast network, basically, it means that all your channels or all your events are accessible for everybody, right? Because that's a broadcast in its name. You need conditional access if you want to be able to differentiate between your subscribers, to be able to bundle channels into packages, right? And that's so. Conditional access can be considered as a business enabler primary, right, for broadcast operations. DRM is content protection, right? So it avoids that copies can be played out by people who aren't subscribed, basically, to it. And forensic watermarking then is a tool to find a traitor, right? And forensic means it has to do with criminal, right? If you look at the dictionary of what forensic means, it's always associated to criminal activities, right? So whereas CA and DRM enable you in your business and protect content, if there is an offender, basically, then you need forensic watermarking to find that offender. So it's at the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, and how you then use it, that can be shown in from this slide. Basically, what we have done is we have integrated it into our suite of anti-piracy solutions, where basically we not only embed the watermark, but we also go out on the net and other marketplaces and so on to find infringed content, to monitor social media, for example, and other platforms during live events, to analyze what we found, to do some human verification steps, to enforce it, right, based on Digital Millennium Copy Act, for example, or we've got a couple of solutions for that, to, especially during live events, to blacklist users that we found from the watermark, right? So we pull out the watermark of clips or live channels that we find, and then you can blacklist them or revocate their IDs, basically. And of course, there's always some reporting needed. But that's basically how it's being applied for content protection.
And then finally, Ronald, and briefly, how do telco TV operators make use of all of this, of forensic methods and conditional access and DRM? How do you bring all of that together for them?
Yeah, what we typically see that is like a 5-step approach. What those people do, right? So in the basis, step 1 is protect and prevent. Using the techniques like CA, DRM, often nowadays also forensic watermarking. But there's a lot more needed, right? You need to access your platforms. You need to make sure that they are hardened, that they are not accessible, that you are not exposing things which should be kept secret. Monitor and detect, right? Monitor and detect your platforms as well as marketplaces. And if then something happens, you need to analyze and investigate those areas. And in the end, the final step is if there is truly something found and investigated, you may need enforce, you may need even some support in criminal and civil enforcement. And basically, Irdeto supports the customers in all these 5 steps.
Great. Ronald Peters at Irdeto, thank you for that overview. A great start to our discussion, and kind of great to start with the importance of content protection. Indeed, operators who want to license the most premium content rights, of course, need to consider that security as a crucial part of what they're doing. Stay with us, because we'll come back to you for a bit of a chat later. But now's a good moment, I think, to turn to you, Carlos Don at Oregon Networks. Tell us a little bit about, well, I suppose set-top boxes now, and in particular, what telco TV operators can do to extend the lifespan of their set-top box assets.
Well, the main benefits of the set-top box upcycling or extending the life of these boxes are achieving a greater return of investment for all the deployed set-top boxes. This is the main benefit of doing this. But there is also another important thing, which is achieving the eco-sustainability by slowing down the replacement cycles for millions of devices in the field. This is very important, I think. There are some challenges, though, and the key challenge is finding a software partner and system integrator with the necessary experience and expertise to keep older generation set-top boxes maintained and refreshed with features that the customer needs and demands. And actually, this is exactly the need that Oregon addresses with 25 years of delivering such solutions and services to these operators.
Now, oh, sorry, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, if you could bring up quickly case of study with one of our customers. Yeah, Megacable. Megacable is one of the largest TV operators in Latin America. They have more than 4 million users. They have also around 3.5 set-top box deployed by different manufacturers such as Huawei, Technicolor, Skyworth, CTE. What are the key challenges they faced? Having hardware from a lot of different set-top box manufacturers, they have inconsistent user experience, stability, performance, different releases depending of these different companies, and the manufacturers sometimes are not able to match Megacable's ambitions for new roadmap features and services because they have to align all of them together. Sorry.
Oh, you've gone one step too far. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. So Megacable chose Oregon to prove the set-top box upcycling solution. We were engaged to deliver a set-top box software client across all these deployed Megacable boxes with the objective of delivering a unified user experience, new features, performance, and obviously having one release cycle for all the different set-top boxes. What are the key objectives of upcycling? Transition from IPTV only delivery services to OTT. Also aggregate premium apps such as Netflix, Amazon, and others. Improve the overall user experience and all the features. And improve security. And finally, extend the set-top box life cycle, which leads to a greater return of investment.
Great. Now, let's dig into some of the specifics there. What are some of the technical challenges of swapping a legacy set-top box when you're updating the operating system, the software, whilst the box is in service? What are some of the specific challenges that you have to deal with in that scenario?
Well, set-top box upcycling is technically very challenging. with a requirement to work with limited CPU and memory for these legacy boxes, it is critical to have a partner that is experienced with such environments, whilst having a realistic view of the achievable goals in these boxes. The operators should work closely with their selected software partner to define the key goals and de-risk all the technical dependencies during early proof of concept stage. Sometimes something that is sometimes overlooked is the benefit of maintaining a good working relationship with the original hardware manufacturer and chipset provider, as some assistance might be required from them to, let's say, unlock legacy set-top boxes to enable them to run a new upcycled software stack.
Now, you touched in the case study on a couple of the key topics that do come up for telco TV operators. One is the importance of being able to aggregate, become a super aggregator, bring in multiple OTT apps into their ecosystem. And then, of course, the other is the operating system on the box, the choice. Are there options for telco TV operators besides Android TV that you mentioned?
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because there's no doubt that the current global trend for all telcos is Android TV for new deployments. Due to Google's market prominence and a stronger partner ecosystem, whilst Oregon is also delivering set-top boxes projects globally on various Linux-based middleware platforms, these have been a minority during the last few years as Android TV has built market share. However, in terms of legacy set-top boxes upcycling, this is very different. Android TV is unlikely to be an appropriate solution for most projects. The need for lightweight and fully controllable platforms guides most migrations and upcycle projects towards either Linux or Android open source projects. Oregon maintains its own Centerio OS middleware for this purpose, as well as supporting options such as Android open source and RDK.
The final question that I wanted to put to you, of course, is going beyond the set-top box, because, of course, consumers are watching and consuming services on a whole range of different devices these days. So how can telco TV operators maintain a consistent experience, not only across different types of set-top box, but across multiple devices?
Well, the challenge for an operator with a mix of both new and legacy set-top boxes platforms is to make these various ecosystems unified as possible. This brings the importance of being able to support the same streaming formats, such as MPEG Dash and low latency CMAF as a result of upcycled projects, but also the ability to deliver OTT applications from Netflix, Amazon, and others onto upcycled STV platforms. These are the key goals that Oregon has delivered on multiple operators, including Megacable, as I mentioned, in collaboration with Huawei.
Great. Carlos Don at Oregon Networks. Thank you. I was going to say stay with us, because we'll come back to you and join you into the discussion in a few minutes. But I wanted now to turn to Steve Tinter at Skyworth. And let's think about the importance of customer acquisition and user experience and making a service really attractive. What is the unique value that a telco TV operator can bring to do all of that?
It's really a value of having a set-top box, having a consumer device in the home, as opposed to an application on a smart TV, for example, or a tablet. So when a pay TV operator designs their set-top box, they generally want to put their brand front and center. It's no longer a manufacturer brand. It's an operator brand. Means the operator can control the customer journey from acquisition to service provision all through the life cycle, and have the opportunity to upsell all along the way. So from customer acquisition to unboxing to upselling services and packages during the customer's life cycle, their brand is front and center all the time. For example, I came back to unboxing again. It's typical that your set-top box is called by the operator's name. So you would call it a Tata box or a dish box. You wouldn't call it a Shenzhen Skyworth digital box or a Technicolor box. You'd call it by the operator's name. So it's putting the operator's brand in front of the TV or beside the TV in a place where the consumer can see it at all times during their at all times during their life cycle. set-top box is unique in putting the operator in control of the service and the data as well, in terms of certainly in the telco domain, all the set-top boxes are bi-directional. So you can use the set-top box as a sensor, in effect, get information back from the consumer about what content they're consuming, what they're looking for, and curate their content back to them and use it again as an upselling opportunity.
Yeah. Now you're touching there on some of the more interesting, innovative features, actually. So what are some of the features and specifications that you can provide in set-top boxes and that can help create a differentiated experience for operators?
Well, there's a few common trends. I think right now the trends are towards obviously maintaining picture and audio quality, 4K HDR, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos. These are common requirements of the set-top box, and that will evolve over time to people wanting 8K and beyond. Excuse me. The requirements of the set-top box are equally driven by the operator and also third-party applications like Netflix and Amazon Prime. They have their own requirements of the set-top box in terms of performance and graphical displays, etc. So that's important. Hardware evolution, we're seeing a trend towards much smaller devices, dongle stick form factors, micro puck form factors. Small is beautiful, I wrote down on my notes here. The drive for better quality content and user experience is causing the hardware iterations, the next generation Wi-Fi, so 6E, Wi-Fi 7, and demands for increased CPU performance at all points in the trend. I mean, it's very typical to get a requirement for 16K DMIPS as standard now and 24K DMIPS as a high-end box. And I think that will only increase over time. So next year it's going to be another level. Mm-hmm. Voice search is another trend. In fact, it's mandatory for a lot of OSs. So voice search, remote controls with integrated voice search as well, is very common. Operators are always looking for ways to make their services more sticky. So they want the next technical dongle, a little add-on that they can give to make it seem as though they're innovating. So stuff like gaming services, home security services, using the set-top box as a hub in the home for these additional services above and beyond just watching TV.
Yeah. Now, going beyond what the consumer is able to touch and see and interact with, set-top boxes also obviously work behind the scenes in different ways. And one thing I wanted to ask you about was the role of a hybrid set-top box able to handle both multicast and unicast delivery of video content. What difference does that make to an operator?
Okay, the telco domain, the operators are uniquely positioned to offer linear multicast services because of the networks that they run as part of their broadband package. So the telcos typically see the TV as a value-added service, which adds some stickiness to their brand and their broadband package. For the telcos to compete in the broadcast TV operators, they need to provide a linear service and OTT service. So the hybrid set-top box allows the use of multicast and a full suite of OTT applications on unicast as well.
Yeah, I think certainly from the research that we've done, that ability for the operators to bring the linear channels on top of all of the on-demand content is a crucial differentiator. So that's an important point. Yeah. I guess the other way that operators can differentiate is in the home entertainment space and making sure that their device is the one that consumers want to use and watch. So what are some of the things that you can do there to make the set-top box and go beyond the set-top box to make that the sort of compelling center of the consumer's home entertainment experience?
So integrating the set-top box into a TV, for example. So we've got example in Europe, a very famous brand name I'm sure we all know. And that's been a popular request from a lot of other operators that I interact with. So they want a whole glass-to-glass experience for their customers with, integrated sound bar, integrated voice search into the TV. So it's kind of converging the TV experience into the TV screen. I beg your pardon, the set-top box experience into the TV screen, maintaining the branding across that whole domain. Other trends again: smart speakers, sound bars, devices with integrated mesh Wi-Fi, that kind of thing.
Great. Thank you, Stephen Tinter, Skyworth. A great overview there of the way that the in-home experience is changing. I want to pick up that topic of multicast and unicast now with Ming Chao at Huawei, who, as we mentioned at the start, have kindly brought all of our speakers together today to make this webinar possible. What are the reasons that telco TV providers may use multicast over unicast for that live content delivery, Ming?
All right, glad that you asked that. I would say that at one time, telco TV operator debated the questions of whether multicast should be replaced by unicast, but now I can clearly to tell you that all tier 1 telco operators that says that unicast and multicast, these two technologies should coexist and complement each other to deliver content from a hybrid approach. No doubt, of course, that unicast is network agnostic, flexible, somehow I would say that low at startup cost. But it also suffered two serious problems here. First, what you're seeing is that it is the exponential growth of CDN expense, which I don't have to explain how streaming costs get, multiplied here. So when the service, usage goes up, and also that 4K or maybe 60 frames per second are demanded for higher video quality by user, then that will be a huge problem for that. But I would say the second issue, which is bothering telco TV operator most, is the unicast is non-QoS nature. Every unicast stream condition can be quite different, especially when every different stream run through different various networks delivered by different CDNs. So it just makes those so-called the service monitoring over OTT unicast streaming so inefficient. And telco TV operator doesn't want to take the risk of delivering, so expensive and premium live content on unicast. And because it should be done, or by the multicast, and they will do the job right. And after all, multicast is QoS native, has unlimited streaming capacity, and also offer a unique TCO reductions on infrastructure investment. What does that mean? It means that once you build it, the network cost, will diminish it over the time in long run. So in those cases, that's why that multicast will continue to serve as a live broadcast, while unicast will complement, to do the other VOD, pre-VOD, or SVOD service, and then respectively.
Mm-hmm. So let's broaden the discussion a bit further. What are some of the service features that are most demanded by telco TV operators in your experience, and why are they demanding those features?
Okay, so let me bring up some visuals, so that to show. Okay, here you see by gathering the market information we collected, I would say in the past, let's say 2 years. So that at least we found, 6 major categories of video solution requested by telco TV operators. The first one, obviously, is there will be OTT low latency live streaming solutions. It doesn't only meet, to cater for the increasing mobile video usage, but indeed the telco aim at this low latency streaming to provide a premium live experience for multi-screen user when they are connecting to the telco networks. That's very important. The second one, I would say that, of course, maybe you already have, the answer, that will be set-top box with OTT apps integrations. Certainly that, operator realize the importance of, one-stop content hub for user to access all OT content, in one place. But more importantly, it's about the ARPU growth, which is very effectively achieved by the service, by bundling telco TV and OTT video service together, and it's already proven, I would say, worldwide. And then the third, the important, demand from telco operator is about advertising insertions, which is that, of course, advertising revenue itself, sounds, very good. But telco indeed are launching ad-supported video service to harvest the market with a very different business model. This is why advertising insertion is needed. And then fourth one, I would say, is service quality management, SQM. It has always been, mandatory item by telco TV operators to ensure, so-called that premium network video experience can be delivered. And now the SQM, has a bit difference now because it has been requested to extend beyond set-top box coverage, but to all devices inside or outside the network. So that makes things very challenging. And then also, the fifth one I would say is service reliability. This isn't really about a single solution, I would say, but a mix of measurements that telco TV service, want to have the service assurance, at all time, so that it will include a lot of things inside, including such as, multi-CDN, anti-overloading mechanisms, service redundancy, or many other things. So that these things make things so complex that we are seeing only a few solution provider can manage nowadays. And last but not least is really about the video operation analytics, which is another thing that telco TV is really focused or heavily requested. It's not about just reporting maybe a service summary. Now they are requesting a big data analytic approach to cross-examine user behavior, content performance, platform resources utilizations, in one-stop shop, just like an ERP. So all those things we see that is the most wanted feature or solutions nowadays by telco.
And then what are some of the concerns, though, when telco TV is adopting these new technology, new platform solutions in this converged OTT future?
Okay. You know what? No surprise, I would say. Telco TV operator have some of the highest requirement in the market in terms of technology adoption for their services. The first one I would say is that they require the solutions need to meet the fundamental standard of carrier-grade reliability, the 99.999% of the service availability. And in this case, it involve a lot of things, such as resilience, redundancy arrangement for each single module of it. I said before, anti-overloading mechanism, in place in every part of the software and hardware. Also, full stack of security measurements, from software to hardware, as well as 24/7, service support. Indeed, that is at the top of the list. When telco come to to consider what is the service assurance for the solutions they should adopt. So on the other hand, telco also look into whether the solutions connecting to a global solution partnership, where the best of breed technologies in the industry can be brought to them to provide an important value for them for evolutions, those kind of things. The second concern I would say is that really about the solution itself, whether we were able to demonstrate so-called telco network synergy. When video experience now, I would say it's getting very mature, but you can also say that it's getting homogeneous nowadays. Telco TV operator are really looking for the solutions actually can shine the network values of their fiber network or 5G network. And the last concern, and one of the most important concern, which is I will consider, is that they look into the solutions whether it has a long-term product roadmap. From the consideration of service continuity, of course, telco TV operator want to leverage what the solutions can offer over the upgrade, and then over the time for new feature and new functions, so that they can rely on these things, to evolve their service, in the long run, especially to avoid so-called unnecessary customizations of their own. So these three main concerns pretty much, accommodate the whole picture of when telco considers solutions, for their video solutions. These are things they look into it.
And finally, Ming, we've been focused in today's webinar on telco TV, but how does that develop differently? How is it evolving differently from other kinds of pay TV?
Okay, thank you for bringing up that questions. I would say that we look into the telco TV as a very distinctive development path from the other pay TV segment, at least from three dimensions, I would say. The first one that will be telco TV evolves quickly, to a convergent content hub. As I said before, that the hub encompassing, is live TV service, pre-VOD, SVOD, and many other OTT apps all together in one place. And by bundling the telco TV, content hub, broadband, and mobile offering all together, telco indeed already achieved a very significant growth in ARPU and service market penetrations. So that's pretty much is proven. And the second dimension I would say is that telco also, which is focused or positions as a personal home theater. This is a new service propositions for telco TV to emphasize those so-called that ultimate video experience on big screen, including 8K, which is already commercialized, or deployed in China, and it will be pretty much, in every other countries, in the next few years. 4K, 60 frames, even multi-camera view, and they all require telco infrastructure to support to create, so-called that premium experience, which is they see these will create a synergy for TV and network together, and in this case that it makes OTT service competitor so hard for them to catch up in this particular directions. And the last dimension that I would say is all about that we see a very strong momentum, especially for those telco TV operators that have a mobile network. They want to develop so-called a series of so-called exclusive or unique 5G video features, such as free view angle rotations for sports and live events at the user fingertip, so that they can change whatever the camera angle they want, or they can view so-called a live 3D video on a mobile screen without wearing a VR headset. So all of these experience aim at demonstrating 5G network unique capability or characters in terms of ultra low latency and super high bandwidth values. And those are only exclusive to telco network user. So I would say that if you look into this 3 dimension, which is very distinctive and not the other pay TV segment, they can really follow through, but only telco TV operator, they continue, to drive, this so-called, we call it unique pathway.
Great, Ming. Thank you for that overview. Fascinating discussion, and indeed, thank you to all of our speakers. The good news is we have a few minutes left to broaden out the discussion and debate a couple of the topics that have come up today. And the first one I'd like to put to all of you is the question of OTT and how that changes the pay TV service landscape. And I think you can look at that in 2 directions. On the one hand, there's the OTT competition for established operators and the potential to bundle. But then, of course, telco TV operators are also making their own OTT services available. So, yeah, what is the impact on the landscape? Who'd like to start us off with a thought on that? Yeah, go ahead.
So, when I first, when OTT first came on the horizon, operators were scared of it, and it was a kind of competition to them. And then their subscribers started asking for it. So there was a push towards integration of OTT apps onto pay TV operator platforms. Now it's almost mandatory. If you don't have the OTT apps, you're not going to get any customers. So the operators have embraced it and brought it in as part of their service. But it is part of their service. The UI is branded with their brand, even though it's got a Netflix logo or an Amazon Prime logo or whatever. The box itself, the consumer device, is branded with the operator's brand. It doesn't have Netflix written on it. It doesn't have anything else written on it apart from the operator's name. So I think it's all that all-encompassing embracement. Is that even a real word? The embracing of OTT services onto operator platforms is what I see now. Mm-hmm. It's mandatory.
Yeah, of course, it is mandatory for most of the customers now. And the challenges are to mix the OTT services from the premium apps and the OTT services from the operator. This is quite of a challenge that sometimes the operator overlooked, how to do a search that can fetch content from the premium app and from your own services. This has to be very well integrated so the customer has a very good user experience in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say confirming Steve and Carlos here, basically, we call it the super aggregator strategy, because that's the new role, I would say, of the telco TV operator. Adding another element, right? Because what you also see is that the traditional content owners might go direct to consumer with their own OTT subscription, which creates another possibility to become the aggregator, right? Because you might lose a certain soccer competition or whatever. You might lose it yourself because a channel lost it or you got it yourself. But it creates another opportunity to bundle as the super aggregator with those direct-to-consumer players, basically.
Yeah, I would agree of you guys, comments, on the OTT impact. Indeed, that Huawei and our customers see that OTT, of course, pros and cons, but we is like a competitions. Of course, continue to compete so that the telco really, should drive so-called the innovation of itself, to squeeze out extra mile of what they can really offer, not only network, not only content, but also which is an end-to-end offering, including devices, including unique user experience, those things that I think is amazing, So there might be competition somehow that really, help, the market develop. At the same time, but this is also cooperation. As I said before, that because of telco this time have OTT, the content offering instantly enriched so much. I keep hearing that the telco getting, their ARPU double, the pay TV ARPU double. We call it aggregator ARPU double. Some of them getting triple because of so-called these bundling things. Of course, that will be pretty much commoditized. Maybe it will be homogeneous. That's why the telco on top of it, they continue to evolve, has the extra edge on it. So I would say that, it indeed that we see all will be a beautiful, brave new world to come. And then I would say that everyone right now is embrace the new change.
Interesting. So, let's continue the discussion that we touched on a moment ago around the role of telco TV as opposed to other kinds of pay TV platform. What is it that telco TV does differently in terms of performance compared with perhaps other types of pay TV? Who wants to be brave and start us off on that topic?
Yeah, let me, yeah, please, yeah, Ronald, please go ahead.
Well, I mean, in definition, right, or the definition I think that we are keeping up here today, the telco TVs have their own, they have their own network, right? Whereas I would say the traditional pay TV operator, looking at the DTH, the satellite operators, they don't, right? So what you of course see is that in the current model, especially those pay TV operators, they need to either set up a return path for interactive services. Or they need to become an OTT player as well, right? Whereas, and that's very different in its nature from what that telco operator is doing, right? Because he sees that big demand of his network, and he might have another business opportunity in cooperating with that traditional pay TV operator, because he might want to bundle it with his broadband offerings, for example. I think that's one of the difference that you see in acting between those telco operators versus the pay TV operators.
Yep. Yeah.
You see, many of the traditional operators don't want to become telcos. They don't know how to be telcos. So yeah, the telcos got, as Ronald said, the telcos got a unique offering in terms of the bundling of the actual CDN, the content delivery platform, and the content itself.
Any more thoughts on that, Ming? Ming, I know it's an important topic for you.
Indeed, I just want to share one observation, whether you agree with me or not, which is when for the traditional broadcaster or pay TV operator, when they move forward to so-called IP video delivery generations, their approach, of course, they focus on content. And in terms of the user experience, they try to minimize the so-called bandwidth, because of the natural born inefficiency without a network. But telco is doing the other way around, which is continue to excel all the experience you can get. So that's why the first 4K commercial broadcast is on IPs, not really on DVB. Maybe will be what might be that they have done in terms of event, but as a regular service 4K is on IP, so that we will continue to see so-called this new experience pretty much driven by so-called and telco TV side. And also something more excited I have to preview, that you are aware of that a lot of spectrums is being, shifted from DVB satellite, towards 5G. And 5G also has the new missions, which is to carry 5G broadcast and also which is 5G multicast, in very near future. So in this case, that now telco pretty much, not only doing the service offer to end user, telco soon will also act as a B2B platform to enabling their networks to everyone else in the market, to deliver the service this time, through IP. And this is things that I think is very, very exciting.
Exactly. Telcos are now moving into the delivering their own network to deliver this these new solutions. So yeah, I agree.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that seems like a great point to wrap up because we are out of time. So let me thank all of our speakers today. Ronald Peters at Irdeto, thanks to you. Carlos Don at Oregon Networks, Steve Tinter at Skyworth, and Ming Chao at Huawei, who, as I mentioned, kindly sponsored and produced today's webinar as well. Thank you to you all for joining us here for this IBC 365 webinar. A great discussion about some of the challenges and opportunities for telco TV players and some of the enabling technology, whether it's around content protection or quality of service and network or the in-home experience and hardware. I think we covered all of the bases with a great discussion. So thank you to you all. Do stay tuned for other IBC 365 webinars coming up. There's a full program of webinars through to the end of the year. So do have a look on the IBC 365 website, and we look forward to seeing you next time. But for now, thanks very much for joining us.
All right.
Thanks, Robert.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.